to vote by mail. I'm a permanent vote by mail guy. But like, where is, am I going to get my I voted sticker because I can wear this around? I mean, it's one thing to have a mask. I wear my mask proudly whenever I'm in public. But when it's a voting day, I wear my I voted sticker. You got to have that. And to my to my relief, they do not forget to include the I voted sticker in your packet. Thank goodness. These are the little anxieties you have when you go vote. I mean, it's a reality. I voted. I had to do it. I just had I well I, there was no reason to wait. But here's the thing. If you vote by mail, a lot of anxiety about the post office. A lot of anxiety about, oh, who's going to touch my ballot? Is it going to get where it needs to go? And so I skipped the post office and I went straight to my little city hall, and I popped in my ballot into the iron, the iron box. And I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that, yeah, it gets to where it needs to go. And apparently the largest number or the largest number of ballots that don't get counted is because people forget to sign the back. So if you're going to vote by mail, sign the back. I know if you're Asian American, you're voting by mail because we love to do things the easy way, right? I mean, really, it's easy. It's convenient to be permanent vote by mail, especially in California. But think about this. Think about how there are people who want to take away that privilege because they think, oh, and that makes it too easy to vote. It makes it too easy for election fraud. See, this is how good that kind of negative thinking happens, because now I'm thinking about, I got to make sure I practically hand deliver my vote. You don't have to do that. They've done studies that show that there's no election fraud from vote by mail. Votes don't get lost. Votes don't get stolen. But notice the paranoia that sets in. And this is from the folks, the election deniers, the right wing, trying to, erode the trust in our democracy. And I caught myself and I said, I just have to have confidence. Our democracy is going to pull through. My ballot is going to get to the right place. My voice will be counted. My vote is my voice, but my vote will count. Hi, everyone. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, back to you. My takes on all things considerable. This is my talk show, my traditional talk radio show. Think of me as a leftward, less voluble, physically Rush Limbaugh type. But like I said, left leaning. There's not a lot of us, frankly. And I come here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live to talk about these things because I see the news. I need to react. And I can't put it out on the internet widely because on Facebook they're limiting the amount of stuff that talks about politics. Funny, they limit me, but they should limit all the other bits of misinformation. I am the antidote to the misinformation. I'm the antidote to all the Joneses the Alex Joneses out there, all the other right-wing conspiracy theorists. I'm the balance. That's why they need me. But you can catch us on YouTube, my Emil Guillermo channel, YouTube at Emil Amok 1. We're also on Twitter at Emil Amok. Oh, Twitter, my goodness. This is breaking news. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, Elon, this is New York Times reporting, Elon Musk moved to cut the social media company's staff in half, laying off about 3,700 employees, causing confusion and frustration, you bet. The layoffs hit across many divisions, including the engineering and machine learning units, the teams that manage content moderation, and the sales and advertising departments. Of course, cut the sales guys. 3,700 employees. You knew that company was fat. But I blame Jack Dorsey. Blame all the people who started Twitter. This is the truth about tech. This is the truth about the tech world. It is no different from the regular capitalist world. And we should have known that decades ago because, the technology explosion, right? I guess the first wave was 2000. The internet really started picking up in 95, but the first big wave, maybe 2000, then there was a bust, and now we're 22 years since then. Twitter has been, around since, maybe the mid 2000s, right? And there was always the hope that maybe the tech folks were going to be the ideal, right? This was the world is dystopian. The internet is, the dream. We should have known better, right? I mean, this is just capitalism, pure and simple. You should have thought of it in those terms as soon as people started talking about stock options, as people began to talk about the value in a company being shareholder value. And so now here's Elon Musk saying, okay, we got to run this thing like a business, which is good because it's a business, it's not a country, right? But 3,700 employees, cut it in half. That was a lot of people that company was feeding. That was a lot of families who are waking up, or they're not waking up. Well, maybe they're waking up today, but they've been jarred into the reality of Elon Musk buying Twitter. And now I guess all the rest of us have to think about, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to stand by Twitter, jump ship, take an enlightened view of Twitter and social media, maybe go back to our lives? I use it sporadically. I did tweet out that, hey, I'm doing this show here. I'm tweeting out my live version of this show on Twitter, but also on YouTube at Emil Amok1, also on Facebook.com, FB.com, Facebook Watch, EmilGuillermo.media, that page on Facebook. You can see it all on my own website, amok.com. But, I use social media, but now Elon Musk, his buying of Twitter is making me wonder. I probably will curtail or at least reduce my use of Twitter even more. What's funny is today we got this great news about our economy. The U.S. economy is doing well. I mean, jobless number is, pretty low. We have business being, seen as pretty robust. It's almost too robust because the Fed is raising interest rates rather. And the paradox is we need to see more layoffs. We need to see exactly what Elon Musk is doing. I don't know. But I think this is the kind of thing just before an election, which makes people wonder, oh, yeah, pocketbook issues, those are the issues that are important. I don't know. I mean, you could say, yeah, well, I guess this shows, right? Vote your pocketbook. I hope not. I hope you vote your Constitution. I hope you vote, or what might be left of it. I hope you vote for democracy, because I'm kind of unsure what's going to happen on Tuesday. I mean, I think if some of these indicators are out there, it's very tight. You can't tell, but who knows? I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that people lied to pollsters, that people did not talk to pollsters, that the people who did talk to pollsters, if they were honest, maybe there is a group of solid blues and solid reds who understand the importance of this election, and they will come forward and they will vote responsibly. Not for the election deniers, but vote for Republicans and Democrats. Vote for the good people who will preserve our democracy. Which raises the irony that, my goodness, the future of our democracy really depends on people who don't care about democracy, people who aren't paying attention, people who are like, oh, do I have to vote today? Look, I'm mentioning I voted today because a lot of people might think, oh, it's not the big election, it's not the presidency, but it's more than that. It's really our country. And you got to vote. You got to vote. And if you haven't registered yet in California, if you're in California, you can register. You can be a provisional ballot and be counted afterwards. You can count. You can vote. Just go on the Secretary of State website. You can vote even if you haven't registered. And there's some states where, fortunately, you can same day register. This is probably the most important election that I can't imagine a more important election. We have slid down this. They talk about the slippery slope. We are down the slippery slope. When Trump was elected, when the election deniers, they're like 300 on the ballot throughout the nation. We're going to see an implosion of democracy if a large portion of those 300 election deniers get in. We got to vote. Good people, good patriots have to vote. So on today's show, I want to bring on my good friend. It's Friday. Daniel Phil Gonzales, San Francisco State University, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, political analyst. I'm going to bring him on, and we're going to talk about affirmative action, because that was this week. But while we're talking about democracy, let's talk about democracy. Let me bring on Dan. Hi, Dan. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you. Nice
Yeah,
to have you back from New York.
yeah. I was there, and it was good to just see how it's crazy everywhere. The ads. My stance is I don't want to give any credibility to any of the ads. It's all propaganda. And I'd
Okay.
rather go to a source that's good, like a news source, or I'm just going to go read something that I trust. I'm not going to trust an ad. I mean, there is so much money being put into these ads, and it's a barrage of things. I think it's all confusing, but I think that's the point. They don't want you to know any one particular fact. They want to confuse the voter.
Who's they?
Well, the politicos who run the thing, who,
Are you going
like,
to do both sides on me? Are you going to say that
I,
there's
I'm not going to say both sides. I'm
an
going to say that
equivalence? Yeah.
I'm going to say that it seems that well, I don't want to say that the left is totally innocent, but the right has put on some very nasty ads. There's one in particular running in Georgia that Stephen Miller, the former Trump former Trump
Oh, you
official.
mean the guy that got cold cocked while he was crossing the street in D.C.?
Well,
That Stephen Miller?
yeah, well, Stephen Miller, who, friend of, alt right type folks, he's put out these really uh, anti Asian, anti Asian specifically racist,
Yeah,
uh,
specific. Yeah.
yeah, materials that are.
Have you seen who he's married to?
He's married to a person of color, I know,
Yeah.
right? And so it's kind of astonishing that he would do that, but that the fact that he could do this in he's not doing it nationally. His group is called the AFL, which is kind of he calls it America First Legal. He calls it a right wing or conservative version of the ACLU, which I don't know. Do we need a right wing version of the ACLU? The ACLU stands for everybody.
I don't know what that would mean. Okay,
A right,
what would a conserv even if we just say moderately right, if we
yeah,
say centrist conservative, if we do that, what
yeah.
does that mean? What can you see as positions that they would take on major constitutional issues?
Well,
Second Amendment would be clear, right?
yeah. Well, the ACLU supports everyone, right? So if you're a conservative version of the ACLU, I guess you're for less speech, or you're for speech for just people you like and people you know. I
Yeah,
guess.
only speech that condemns diversity
Yeah.
theory, only speech that allows for the banning of books, right? Only speech that speaks in favor of military adversaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Because,
this is a scary thing because Stephen Miller, his radio spots and TV spots airing in Georgia, starting on the 1st in November. There's a line. When did racism against white people become okay? I mean, that's how it starts, and
yeah,
it's
oh yeah,
they're anti. They stop left wing racism and anti white bigotry. I mean, this place in the South. This
but it
place,
works. It works. You don't have to go to the South. You could go to Contra Costa County, and there people say, yeah, you
well,
could go to, the
yeah,
other county where I have another house, right? You could go
yeah,
up to what is that? Yeah,
Solano. I think it's
Solano County. That's right.
well, you're talking
How
about
about
the
your county? Damn, let's not leave
yeah.
it out. Aren't you
Well,
in Merced? Are you in Merced?
no, no, no. But the point, well, the Central Valley, you don't have to go far from the Bay
No,
Area
no.
to get to the red parts of the blue state, and
Yeah, yeah.
uh, I'm just astonished that this ad. Well, the ad is playing in Georgia and Tennessee, and a lot of people are upset because it does take a shot at Asian Americans, saying
Do you have
that
it? Can you play it or what?
no, well, actually, it's more of a flyer. There's a flyer about the Asian Americans
Okay.
that let's see, I've got it on. It just said something like Asian America, it, talking about how it was wrong to give people positions or to hire people based on their skin color. That this is the thing, and but it's clearly anti-Asian, and it brings us to the affirmative action question because a lot of Asians, Chinese Americans specifically, conservative ones, are out there, and they're still after the affirmative action hearings at the Supreme Court on Monday. They're very proud, they're very happy, they're very positive that they will defeat affirmative action, and they're you know arm in arm with conservatives. What will they say when they see the conservatives lash back at them saying, oh, sorry, we just used you, Asian Americans, but really, we don't really like you because you're not white? What are they going to say? I
But
mean,
that's the thing, though. See, this has always been the underlying element in American society.
yeah,
It ebbs and it flows with what happens on the surface of activity in among the masses, right? So when you see surface activity among the masses, especially when it gets noticed generally across the media. Today, what's different is you don't have three or four news sources that pretty much agree on the same facts.
Yeah.
They may differ, right, on their analysis. They may differ slightly on how they describe the facts, but for the most part, all the way up until the advent of social media, right, and the internet, you had reasonably comparable reliability on news sources,
Yeah.
print and television and radio, right? Right wing radio, however, grew like crazy in the 70s and 80s. I was surprised that even in good old liberal San Francisco,
Oh
there
yeah.
were right wing radio stations and right wing talk. And it
Yeah.
was scary. It was scary in the 70s and 80s, man.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
look, I got fired from one station because I wasn't considered political enough. I was well. It wasn't that I wasn't political. I wasn't right wing political, and I wouldn't play it any. I wouldn't sing any other song. So
which
I know.
was that KPIX, the CBS affiliate?
I know. I was at KSFO Radio. I was
Oh,
at.
okay. Oh,
I
that
did
was right wing as hell. That
that was
really
right wing.
disappointing. Really disappointing. When I was a kid, KSFO broadcast baseball,
Yeah.
and they also broadcast. They were one of the few stations on AM that played jazz,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and the great
Al
God,
Collins.
Al
Jazz.
Collins, Al Jazzbo Collins, right,
Yeah.
was on the weekends, and that's where I learned about John Coltrane. And I
Yeah.
started I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I was gravitating towards that kind of music. And everybody thought, there's something wrong with your kid.
Yeah. You're weird. Well,
Yeah,
that's like my introduction to jazz was going to the library, and you could take out records,
yeah, yeah.
and you wouldn't see my mom or dad with records like the Essential Dizzy Gillespie or Charlie Parker or anything like that. But I could take them out at the library, and there it
Right,
was.
right,
I
right.
just bring to the record player and push
That's
away.
right.
The Philip, the Taglish songs. They had one song, "No Money, No Honey." Do you remember that? Do you remember "No Money, No
No,
Honey"? That was a Filipino. That was on a 78.
yeah,
Anyway, look. Uh, so to get back to
that was a really. Woo.
affirmative, yeah, to get
Oh,
back to affirmative action,
I've
and
always
then
hated the
we'll
term.
talk about Bobby.
I hated the term from the time it got borrowed from some speech by not even a president. It was borrowed from a speech that was offered by someone within the newly created EO under the EOA. Remember the Economic Opportunity Act,
Oh yeah,
1965. That was the root of
yeah,
all of the federal funded activity that was attempting to generate a greater level of equity, especially racial equity. And the major target was not only African Americans, but African American men, particularly. And you could tell it didn't work really well because here we are,
yeah. Well,
60 years later.
all right. So look at the court case. It's very specific about the use of race consciousness in
Yep.
college admissions. You heard the hearings on Monday. I've talked about them on my show. What were your impressions about the hearings and the questions? And does that indicate anything about where the court might go on affirmative action?
It's not looking good.
Yeah,
They're at least going to shrink the application of affirmative action standards, or potentially eliminate it entirely.
yeah.
Now, if they do that, that's far more far-reaching than simply affirmative action itself. If they do away with affirmative action programs altogether, that could signal a reversal of other rights that we like the Roe case that we consider given rights. Okay, so what are we going to go back to Brown versus Board of Education?
you,
Are we,
you know, pe- People have mentioned that because Brown versus Board of Education undid the 1898 Plessy versus Ferguson, which said
Yes.
separate but equal was good.
Yep.
Brown said, no, that's not good. And that, 1898 to 1954, when Brown passed, that was kind of precedent, right?
Well, if you buy the argument that Roe was badly decided without any actual rationale
mm,
for that position, okay, then they could say anything they want to about other cases that presented challenges to the existing social reality. And the existing social reality in 1954 was that American society was segregated as hell.
yeah,
I remember my dad bringing us to the Sheraton Palace, and because Filipinos had large organizations would rent that gold ballroom in the back near Jesse Street, right?
yeah.
We'd have to go in through the Jesse Street. We wouldn't go in through the front entrance on New Montgomery.
Well, but Dan, they wouldn't go all the way back to Brown and reverse Brown, would they? I mean, would they?
They may not reverse it in its entirety, but they could permit certain kinds of private behavior.
Mm,
They could permit certain kinds of private behavior for private schools.
yeah. I mean, did you get that sense from the questions that they were going that way? Because, if they do reverse precedent in terms of, how race is viewed, they would have to go back to that. I mean, they wouldn't just go back to the Grutter case in 2003 or to the case, what's the Baki case in
78.
78. They wouldn't have to go there, or maybe that they stopped there. They wouldn't have to go all the way back to Brown.
It's possible. That's what I think that the greatest probability is that they'll restate the Baki case and say that you can't do quotas. Baki was really simple. You can't do quotas, but you can still use race as a criteria. It just can't be the primary criteria. So they've been doing that dance though in a lot of the other cases that have come up since then. Okay, all the way up to the present. There was a Wisconsin case, there was a
Right.
Michigan case, there was a Texas case, and each time they allowed some form of affirmative action to stand, but they qualified its application further and further, to narrow it further and further.
Yeah. One thing that I don't get is if they do go back all the way to Grutter, they might do so because Sandra Day O'Connor's her statements when Grutter was passed, saying that we're going to put a timestamp, right? Maybe in 25 years this isn't going to be necessary.
Yeah, we're all going to be equal.
Yeah, user race preferences.
Well,
I
they
mean,
made that decision when they struck down Section 5 of the Civil Rights Act.
right, right.
They
Well,
said we don't need it anymore.
one of the things about this is that they mentioned that phrase about maybe in 25 years we won't need this. I mean that they mentioned Sandra Day O'Connor's statements uh, continuously during the hearings on Monday, which
Yeah.
made me think that it's not going to be on the basis of what Harvard or University of North Carolina did or didn't do. They'll just say, well, we got this, the time is running out, time to, you know, reverse course. We're here. Would they do that? Expiration date?
Yeah, I it's possible that they could do that, but you're kind of giving a court that had expressed no legal rationale
Mm,
for doing away with Roe, right? Right.
mm.
The legal rationale was it was badly decided. What
Well,
the hell? Yeah.
the rationale here that uh, would be that Grutter said 25 years, and Bakke says no quotas, but race preferences could be included, but they could just cut back on that. They could say no.
Exactly. That's what I think would happen. They would just be whittling it down, knowing that other challenging cases would come up. See, every time a case like this comes up, right, the people who want to challenge affirmative action or any other legislative move towards equity, they will immediately learn how there are spaces, right, for further action. Okay, they did the same thing. Remember in California in the 90s, they were going after immigrants. They were going after affirmative action there too, right? So they used the anti-immigrant position first, and then 3 years later, in the 90s, they went for affirmative action with the California Civil Rights Initiative. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
And they had a black frontman who had
Oh,
actually benefited. Yeah, Ward Connerly. He actually benefited from affirmative action, and he admitted that.
well, this is sort of like Clarence Thomas. I noticed he had in the hearings he was saying he was admitting, I don't know what diversity means. That direct quote. He said, I don't know. You got to tell me. He was asking the lawyer for Harvard. You got to show me what educational diversity actually means because I don't know it. I never went to a racially diverse school. And here's Clarence Thomas admitting that. But you go deep into his background. He went to Holy Cross
That's right.
and he went to Yale Law School, which doesn't speak well of both schools if he's saying they weren't racially diverse. But he
That's
said
right.
they were educationally diverse, but he was a beneficiary of affirmative action because there he was.
Woohoo!
There,
Woo!
and so it just struck me when he said that. And of course,
And was the right or the left very supportive of him when he was
well,
being considered for justice?
the right was supportive, but the left also, despite
Nah, they just didn't want to look like they were hating on a black guy.
yeah, well, but
Yeah,
despite
so they used gender and his sexual behavior.
yeah, despite the Anita Hill aspect of his nomination that tried to block it, that they went ahead and passed him.
Yep,
They
yep.
they didn't block him. They
Democrats are what my father would call CS.
oh
That's
yeah
the English translation of the Ilocano word takemanok, which
so
means the feces of the chicken. Okay.
so it rhymes with hick and hit.
He would say, "Yeah, the Democrats, man, have chickened out. They did. They
Well,
did. They chickened out. They didn't want to look like they were racist and anti-black judge. He was going to be the first one since Thurgood Marshall, right? So,
well, look, but Thomas said, "Hey, high tech lynching. I'm going through a high tech lynching."
yeah, that's right. That's
That
right. And it played. It played, man.
it did play. All right, so we got Tom. Just a little bit of Thomas. We talked about the Sandra Day O'Connor quote. Um, I thought that the liberal justices, Sotomayor, Kagan, and even Ketanji Brown Jackson, did very well
Yes, they did.
questioning and defending and reminding people that the lower courts have upheld, the fact that there was no discrimination at Harvard or UNC, University of North Carolina, and so if there was no discrimination, shouldn't the court just like kick it back? Shouldn't the court just say, okay, the lower courts stand? I mean, I,
That's what they could do.
they
They,
could,
they often do that. Like we refuse to review this,
yeah,
and that's it. They don't even have to rationalize that.
yeah,
And so this court, which won't even rationalize overturning Roe, right? They didn't adequately rationalize it on a constitutional basis at all. The basis of Roe is privacy,
yeah,
okay? And privacy is not declared anywhere in the Constitution. Okay, it actually appears in the modified version, the second version of the California Constitution. There is a stated right to privacy. There is nowhere in the U.S. Constitution a right to privacy. That was established by a series of cases that started in the 50s and then were actually being decided favorably in the favor of the plaintiffs, right? In the 60s, and the first one was Griswold.
Yeah. You know what's crazy about this is that they're using the Constitution and saying, well, this race consciousness is unconstitutional, which
Right.
is strange because aren't there laws in the Constitution against slavery? And that's not colorblind. That's not.
Well, they were actually in the Constitution itself, the body of the Constitution, the articles of the Constitution. There's a protection of the institution of slavery. There's a statement that the issue will be discussed before Congress before 1808. There's actually a protection of the institution of slavery within the body of the Constitution. It's in the amendments of the Constitution that race becomes an actually featured topic, right? But it doesn't appear it only appears in the 13th Amendment. The 14th
Yeah.
Amendment, it kind of, there's an inference, okay, of status,
Well,
uh,
could they say that you know
as well
race
as the 15th Amendment.
race can they say the use of race is unconstitutional?
No, no.
No,
You
yeah,
know, they would have to backtrack across the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments.
yeah.
They
See,
would have to backtrack across the whole EOA, the Economic Opportunity Act. Okay,
yeah.
so they'd have to take that all the way back to the 60s to do that, right? And then if they did that, they'd have to take it all the way back to Brown.
See, this is the thing that the conservatives make it sound like, hey, listen to the jurists, the conservative jurists. Uh, they made the case, that affirmative action is unconstitutional. I heard the Asian Americans, the Chinese, who were the plaintiffs, they were boasting that, oh well, what a brilliant case. They argued the logic of how this was unconstitutional when they really didn't. I mean, I I I worry because the number of like thinkers. I mean, the only thing that's changed this time in this challenge with affirmative action and past ones is number one, the plaintiffs, Asian Americans, but more significantly, the court has changed. It's
Yep.
conservatives, and they're solid conservatives. They're not like, oh, we're going to go to the center. We're going to be like Sandra Day O'Connor. We're going to be. It's these are staunchly diehard to the right
Yeah, I
conservative.
would. Would you consider them moderate
No,
Republicans? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and you could tell by their questions. They asked about religious affiliation. They asked about affinity groups.
Oh,
They
yeah.
asked,
Or what? 6 Catholics?
yeah,
Ask.
yeah. I mean, they were they. It's funny. I say this a lot. I say that there's no way you really can say how these justices will vote. But I think it's pretty clear, given the line of questioning, that well, not given the line of questioning, just given their behavior as conservatives. Period. That that's going to be their leaning, and that's going to be the way this is decided. So
Last time we were on, you asked me, how do you think it's going to go? And I said, if there's going to be anyone who turns towards the liberal minority, the so-called liberal minority, they're actually moderate, but people call them liberal because of the positions they take on the issues. But the two women and one guy, they there's a possibility they'd be joined by Roberts and Coney Barrett,
hmm,
right? Because of the woman thing. I mean, if you're gonna talk about affirmative action, you also have to talk about gender. You can't just talk about sexuality like LGBTQ and race or ethnicity. You have to talk about prejudice against national origin, regardless of race, and issues like that. And so, an intelligent discussion brought on by the universities could do the job. Okay, but that's as close as I think you're going to get. Roberts is. I think I would be very concerned. I mean, right now, there's been articles put out, by reputable press, saying that Roberts is concerned that the image, quote unquote, right, of the
Mhm.
court, is damaged and it's going to get worse. That's inevitable that
Yeah.
it's damaged, then it's going to get worse.
Well, it's the court under his name, and it'll be his reputation. So maybe that's a moderating influence. Don't know, but the
Well,
3 week.
Rehnquist was like that when he became Chief Justice.
Yeah,
He became a moderation, an influence of moderation on the court.
yeah.
Right.
Well, let's just say this. I think that we won't know until 2023 a final decision, and I think that if people are concerned about affirmative action, because this will have impact on everything
Everything.
that has to do with race.
Well, and people don't get that. I don't think they get it. That's the thing about the Chinese plaintiffs.
Mhm.
Okay, remember the cases against Lowell? It was
Yeah,
brought by the same kind of people, not necessarily the same people exactly, but the same type of argument, right?
and yeah,
And,
the same conservative active, not the same group in a specific group, but the group of the larger
right.
group of conservative activists out
Say
to
yeah.
get civil
Well, and
rights.
the foundation of their argument was it should be merit only.
Right.
But the fact of the matter was that when certain universities became concerned that so many Asians were becoming supernumerary, that there were many more Asians attending the biggest universities, including traditional Ivy League schools, right?
Yeah.
In a disproportionate manner. We constitute less than 6% of the total population
Right.
of the United States. But on many campuses, we constituted 20, 30, 40%
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
of, of the attendees.
Yeah.
We constitute sometimes as much as 50% of the graduate divisions. And it scared the hell out of them. And we're talking about the 80s during the Reagan administration.
Yeah.
And so there were massive attacks. Gingrich, massive attacks against affirmative action.
Yeah.
But all you had to do was go forth and say, okay, show me where racism has not disappeared. Okay, show me that these issues don't involve race in some way, shape, or another. And because of the existence of racism and sexism, and it was plentiful. There was so many cases out, right? Remember the tailhook scandal against the Navy? There were all kinds of, so all of these kinds of issues presented real challenges to do away with affirmative action entirely. And it was O'Connor who she really disliked affirmative action in any kind of equity activity. She really disliked it.
But she
One,
voted
even
for
the
it. She
yeah,
voted. She
yeah,
voted in Grutter to keep it going, and
that's right.
with her little, provisor that in 25 years, let's hope this is not going to be necessary. But so all right, yeah, to transition to the voting and the fight for democracy. I I'm hoping that this will be a motivating factor. Now, everywhere in all the polling that's been done in the last couple days, it shows that the motivating factor to vote has been inflation and the economy, the pocketbook issues, and all the others: abortion, healthcare, immigration. And affirmative action doesn't even make the list. But
That's
I
right.
would hope that affirmative action, if you're concerned about race and race discrimination and fighting it, I would hope you'll use the Supreme Court hearing on Monday as a motivating factor to get out and make sure you vote on November 8th.
See, I think that people, you're absolutely right. I think that people don't understand that affirmative action is not only, the way it's been portrayed from the right is that it's people getting special treatment over the interests of meritorious white people and others, meritorious Chinese Americans, right? Okay, simply because of their race. And the reality is that the other side of affirmative action is completely defensive.
Yeah.
it defends people's rights to be given equal consideration for a job, equal consideration for admission to schools. It's not special consideration. It's equal consideration. So when they're voting in favor of people who are anti-affirmative action, they're actually voting in favor of people who want to do away with equitable treatment. I mean, we're talking about fair treatment. That's it. They
Right.
don't
So
get that.
so if you were fooled thinking that this was to get rid of affirmative action is to somehow protect Asian Americans, you've just fallen on your own sword.
They absolutely have.
Yeah,
Chinese Americans in San Francisco, they challenged Berkeley, they challenged Lowell High School. I seem to vaguely remember someone that we know having also been from Lowell High School.
yeah,
And almost immediately after you graduated, there were attempts to do away
yeah.
program, right? That was supposed to bring on more Latinos and African Americans into Lowell. And that got
Yeah.
challenged again by Chinese Americans. And
Well, they're the perfect victims as seen by the white activists who want to do away with affirmative action, because there are only so many Clarence Thomases to go around. So they pick an Asian American victim and say, look, here are these victims. They're qualified, but in the meantime, they do away with a tool that has really been helpful to create opportunity for not just Asian Americans in general, but also blacks and indigenous and other people of color, Latinos. We would not have a black middle class were it not for
that's
affirmative.
or yeah, as much of a black middle class as we have.
Yeah.
Uh, you
So
know, I agree with that. We would not have as much of an Asian American or a
yeah.
Chinese American middle class. Uh, Chinese Americans. I'd like to see their statistics, their current statistics. But in the 80s and 90s, after the census data came out, uh, between 20 and 30% of their population would be considered working poor. In other words, their income levels were really quite low, which is completely antagonistic, right, to the perception that Asians are blessed with great success, business wise, professionally, and everything else. Well, when you look at the top half of our population, that seems to be true. But people ignore the poverty that's
Yeah.
associated with the other half, but particularly among refugee populations.
Right. The
Some of
South.
those, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I think this is the thing about the economic and poverty statistics of the group as a whole.
that's
But
right.
certainly you can handpick like the Students for Fair Admissions, the SFFA, run by the anti-civil rights activist Ed Blum. He found these Asian Americans who aggrieved. They didn't get in. Uh, they were willing to fight, you know, for their kids to get in, but at the expense maybe of entire group of not just Asian Americans but blacks, Latinos, because without affirmative action, without race consciousness, I don't even want to think about how difficult it would be. It's already difficult now in California to
Yeah,
get blacks
yeah.
and Latinos up to par, in terms of their representation at places like UC Berkeley and or the UC system. Anyway, look,
Yeah, we got to move, but there's another consideration. Why
yeah,
is it they want their kids to get into those schools? That's the major consideration. Is it the kids that want that, or is it the parents? And if the
oh,
kids want it as well as the parents, what's their motivation? Okay, and we need to question that because in my discussions with neighbors and friends who are definitely capable of paying for the tuition and all that stuff, right? They have enough money. It's not an economic issue. It might stress them a little bit, but it's not something that's going to put them in heavily in debt. The question that I asked them is why? Why do you need that? And I said, why do you need it for undergrad? You know,
so
is your kid going to go any further than a BA or BS? And is that the reason that you want them to go to a brand name school like that, an Ivy League school like that? Is that it?
what do they say? Do they say it's status.
Yeah, yeah. They look at me quizzically and think, that's I mean, having that really gets you places. And I
Yeah,
said,
and
not really.
yeah, and that's why they all have fake Louis Vuitton bags from counterfeiter from Hong Kong. Maybe we should just give them a fake Harvard degree.
Yeah, yeah, nah, it's all status, and it's the same response from the Asian Americans, that particularly the first generation immigrants, parents
Mhm.
and grandparents. I mean, they put out money. They grub stake the kid while they're in junior high. They say,
Oh yeah,
you go ahead and you get into this school. We got, don't worry, we're covered for tuition. We got, need any of that stuff. We got $150,000 already set aside, right? And then you tell them, well, if they're going to go to med school, that's more like a quarter mil,
yeah.
right?
Now, I mean, that's the thing. You're right. I mean, the admission to college isn't everything. Even Barack Obama went to Occidental College before he
Yeah,
went to Harvard Law. So
yeah.
anyway, all right, let's move on to the greater issue. Tuesday's coming up, democracy. What did you think of Biden's speech? He laid it on the line.
Oh, I thought it was good. I thought it was on point. It
Yeah,
was it was the question is it going to change any minds?
yeah,
I don't think it's going to change any minds. I think he was on point. I think what it'll do is it'll get people who are already thinking in that direction to actually vote. That's a good thing.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a scary thing, but what surprised me? Well, I guess it shouldn't surprise me. The reaction from the right, like Kevin McCarthy and other
Oh
Republicans,
God.
saying that the the left and Biden, they're the ones dividing, they're the ones scaring. It's like, man, level of the political rhetoric. It's just like, well,
That's all they have. That's all they have.
yeah. I
And
mean,
they've been working that nerve for how many years, Emil? I mean, they've been working that same nerve for 60, 70 years.
yeah,
You know,
but Dan, look at I saw this headline in the New York Times about how something that they wrote about how it looks like the people who hate politics, the people who are so turned off by politics, are going to decide what happens with our democracy.
this is true.
Because the
This is
people
true.
who care about it are talking about like me and you, and the people who are so turned off said, "Oh my God, I don't even know if I need to vote. I don't know." And they take democracy for granted. And Biden's speech was out there to let them know, no, you can't take it for granted this time. You got to go
That's
out there.
right.
And so all these people who they're going to bolster the minority that usually is there paying attention, but these people are going to be part of the 30 plus million that are showing up already to vote because they get the urgency, and we really are in urgent times, right?
Well, I'm hoping that Kevin McCarthy loses his seat. I mean, that's highly unlikely, highly improbable.
Yeah,
But he is in an area where there are a lot of retirees, and so his statements about Medicare and Social Security are going to scare some people legitimately.
yeah,
Okay, it's going to scare some people. I don't know if it's going to change the election outcome, but it's definitely going to put the fear in them, and it's put the Republicans on the defensive.
yeah.
They've got all kinds of people coming out and saying that's not going to happen. That's their defense. Is that's not going to happen. We're not going to do that. It's not going to
Well,
happen. And they've
it's
said consistently, right? I was hearing from, I'd go to weddings, or funerals, and then people say, Professor, right away I know that I'm going to get challenged, right?
yeah,
Because this guy thinks, here's one of those liberal idiots, from the
yeah.
university, and they say things like, well, entitlements are the biggest costs, of government, the U.S. government. I said, no, they're not. It's the military. And
Yeah,
and these guys, a lot of them are veterans, you
yeah,
know. And so I said, no, it's the military. There's two sets of budget items that you need to consider, and when you just look at the one that's above ground, it's already the military far greater expenditure than Medicare and Social Security combined.
yeah. Well,
Secondly, we contribute to the fund on which we draw
oh yeah.
Social
So
Security.
Yeah.
You've contributed. I tell them I've contributed. But, my wife started contributing because she had a federal internship job.
Yeah.
Starting at age 15, she
Yeah.
started contributing. Right?
See, this is the crazy thing about the Republican side. They hold the military spending sacred. They go back. They go after all these other things that really are pocketbook issues.
Yeah.
And here are the
Yep.
people here talking about pocketbook issues, inflation, and the economy. And so that means you're going to vote for Republicans who are going to cut your Social Security and your Medicare. So I just hope that people are paying attention.
Well, they say that they're not going to do that. They say they're not going to do that. Yet, when you look at every damn cycle, especially presidential cycles, not
Yeah,
just midterms, they have somebody in the
yeah,
Republican ranks has said we got to do something about entitlements. This is a drain on the economy. This is a burden on the future of America. This is a burden on our children and grandchildren. You know what?
yeah.
Okay, what?
Hey, the threat definitely is there. So, look, I just hope, like I said, people are paying attention because that's real. But what Biden also talked about the 300 election deniers who are up for election. He also talked about Paul Pelosi. And when I left to go back east for a bit last week, I was in New York. I was astonished when I heard about the Paul Pelosi case. First of all, the information, it was a Saturday and the information did not come out well the first time around, but ultimately it did. But I was shocked, and I was also shocked that once again you did not hear a full-throated condemnation by the Republicans of this political violence.
Yeah, McConnell came
Our,
out, and I thought there were going to be more people.
yeah.
And he condemned the violence and attacks on holders of public office. But he should also be condemning the death threats against poll workers. And people who are counting ballots and stuff like that, right? But
Well,
that's a step too far for him.
well, all that is real. The Washington Post did they did a poll. The ABC, let's see, a wide and bipartisan majority of Americans worry there is increased danger of politically motivated violence in the U.S. Nearly 9 in 10 Americans, 88%, are concerned that political divisions have intensified to the point that there's an increased risk of politically motivated violence in the United States, including over 6 in 10 who say they are very concerned. This is kind of alarming here
Yep.
because it means that all that talk about civil war that's been always been bubbling, just bubbling
Yeah,
under,
and people dismiss it as rhetoric.
but it's real. They believe.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I didn't hit the sneeze button quickly enough.
yeah. I mean, but bless you, bless you. But this is a real thing. And uh, do you think? I mean, the Republicans are trying to say, "Oh, here's some fear, a crime in the street,
Right, right,
cops, and are you
right,
safe?"
right. Yeah, well,
Uh,
they said San Francisco is all full of crime, and that's why Pelosi got attacked, right?
and that's so far, from the truth. And so, I mean, so the real fear is not the criminals that are out in the streets who are committing these petty crimes. The real criminals are the ones who are out there trying to steal our democracy.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who feel that it's not being stolen. I mean, they think we're in the righteous path. We're against all of these things that favor the undeserving, right? Like immigrants who cross the border illegally, right?
Yeah,
And then they dismiss the fact that the people who are being sent to democratic cities, right, that have a high number of Democrat officials, including the mayors, right, they think that this is illegals being sent there. These are people who are awaiting asylum judgments, right,
yeah,
whether or not they get to stay. They actually entered legitimately.
yeah.
So People don't want it. They ignore that these people are legitimate entries.
And yet, that story and the facts around that story have been contorted and
Yep.
all to bring out the fear, the xenophobia, the emotion that will get them to vote a certain way, which, the Republicans want you to vote your fears. The Republicans want you to get out there and vote hate. And yeah, it's just
It's
scary
which
how they
fears.
seem to be winning.
It's which fears though. You know. I
Yeah.
mean, the thing that we can agree on that regardless of party affiliation, fear about the effects of inflation
Oh, yeah.
uh, are legit. Those are legitimate fears.
Yeah.
Okay, so both sides could be voting for their fears, but does that mean that Democrats are going to cross over because
Well,
of the impact of inflation?
I think Democrats and Republicans have to vote for the good people. And the basic question is, you ask a candidate, are you an election denier? Because
Yeah, that there it is. That's
if,
absolutely true.
if you're an election denier, chances are you're also a Social Security denier and Medicare denier. You're also a general health care denier,
That's right.
an
Yeah,
immigration denier, an
that's
affirmative
right.
action denier,
That's
and
right.
we should, and above all, a constitution denier.
That's
And
right.
we should deny the deniers. We
You
need to do.
know, in the middle of my course, right, where I am able to introduce my own perspective. I try to be middle of the road and just do the history and cite examples and everything. But then when you get past Plessy versus Ferguson, things start to look pretty pretty awful, right? That there's a clear right left division, but people get confused because they say, well, Lincoln was a Republican and he was anti-slavery and it was a minority position. He took great risks, and therefore conservatives should be congratulated for doing away with slavery. And I said, well, the reality is that the Republican Party of Lincoln was a progressive party, and his position was very radical at the time. So he knew that he was taking a very risky position. It cost him his life eventually, right?
Yeah,
But you want to consider that because he's Republican, right? That means that conservatives are cool, right?
yeah.
But everything else that's happened since then, right, has turned against people of color,
Well,
especially after 1965.
yeah, they just totally, forget the context of what Republicans were then, what Republicans are now.
Yep.
I just hope that people pay attention and that they go out there and vote. Here's a couple of final questions. Are are we going to be okay, Dan? Are we going to be okay no matter what? I mean, Biden had a really good uh, quote in his speech. He said that just enough people did just enough to protect our democracy. He said that in his making the case for democracy the other night. And it's always by a there's always going to be detractors. There's always going to be people who say, "Oh, we want to do it this other way. We want to do it the autocratic way, or the you know." I know. Is there such a thing as a democratic fascist? I mean, um, I guess that's what the Republicans are trying to. I mean, I'm just saying that it's always been just enough people to save our country. Do you think there's going to be just enough to save our country on Tuesday?
I Okay. Here it is. The races are close enough so that the Republicans could win both houses. Okay, the race is close enough so that the Republicans could win both houses. If they were to win both houses, okay, it's going to be very difficult for them to continue to argue that the electoral process is rigged. Okay,
Right.
so people are on the left and moderates are going to be upset because of the possibility that the Republicans rigged it. So there's going to be a switch of positions, and there's going to be arguments across the country, right? And so, whether or not now, I'm saying that's when if the Republicans win both houses,
Mm.
greater likelihood is that the Democrats could hold the Senate and maybe even gain one or two senators, okay, but lose the
Yeah.
House. But if they lose the House, it's not going to be by 30 positions, 40 positions, 50, 60. I mean, what? Obama in 2010, right? Didn't he lose like 60 House
Yeah.
seats?
A lot. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
a lot. That's very Filipino of you. A lot.
a lot with it, the Republicans only need to net 5 seats to take over the House,
Right.
and
That's
it's really
that's easy to do, but it'll be close. It'll be
yeah,
close. The closer it is, unfortunately for the Democrats, the more rabid dog behavior you will see coming out of the House.
yeah,
Okay, that's going to be really problematic. The people on the Democratic, more specifically the liberal and progressive side, they are not. They do not have the killer instinct. Okay, they will want to fight this thing in the same way that the progressive wing. Remember, they came out with that letter to
right.
that we should ease up on Ukraine a little bit and go for diplomacy with Putin. I mean, that really pissed me off. I'll be really frank with you. As a student of international relations, that was my undergraduate, one of my majors. Um, and once you do that, you're that way the rest of your life. You're watching the global scene all the time, and
Yeah.
that really ticked me off. And Camilla Jayapal, please shut up. Right? I mean, that was
She
dumb.
it was a bad political move. Probably, yeah. You're not hearing much of it, but some people are making hay of it on the other side. Look,
That's right.
are we going to? There's this thought that, well, if it's bad and we lose, we'll still survive. We'll be okay. Something tells me that we're in a little different situation
No, that's lousy analysis. It doesn't go deep enough. It doesn't go deep enough. Once, if the Republicans win both houses, they're going to come after everything you got. They're going to go full blown, and Biden, is not going to get anything done. All you got to do is look back to the Obama administration. The last 6 years, right? He did 2 years of his first term, and all 4 years, except for one act, right? And that was an infrastructure bill, and
uh,
they funded it about one third of what they were asking for. That
right.
was it.
But Dan, if that happens, then the American public will see uh, the problems with the Republicans, and maybe that will mean a switchover in 2024 to, or not a switchover, but an affirmation toward the Democrats in 2024.
I think on local, statewide and local basis, yes, that could do it. Okay, in several states, including states that are purplish, but tend to be more red. Okay, um, but the question for the presidency is who's running.
Right.
You know,
If Trump says he's going to run for the Republicans, that kind of seals it for the Republican side. But then we need someone dynamic on the Democratic side, and would that be Joe Biden?
yeah, did you see that SNL skit?
No, I didn't see.
Oh no, you got to check that out. It's funnier than hell. They
Well,
go
what?
through they go through a whole range of who could be the next person, and they each time they freak out, right? They show somebody freaking out and saying no, and at the end of it they go, okay, okay, okay. So is it Joe? And they all go, oh, yeah, better Joe, better Joe. They come down with that, and it is really good. It was one of the better things they've done lately.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when I saw Joe Biden give that speech the other day on democracy, I thought that's the Biden we want.
Hey,
That that's
that's a guy. Yeah,
but uh, it's he's been I the he's been attacked, and
sure.
when you get
They use
attacked,
age. They use age openly, right?
yeah,
They
I know,
use age
yeah.
and infirmity openly, and even Obama wasn't subject to that, right? Because he had a great jump shot, but
I,
but
well,
he's black, and so there were all the racial inferences, right? And once again, brought to you by Stephen Miller. right?
Yeah.
His anti-immigration campaign, his anti-Obama campaigns. Remember the pictures of lynching
Oh
of
yeah.
Obama?
Yeah.
The Hope poster.
Yeah.
They added a rope,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
I
and and
I just well, let's see what happens on Tuesday. Have you voted yet?
I'm gonna turn it in today.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm waiting on my lagging younger son who's lagging. Linda and I have already filled out our ballots.
Oh, good. Good. Well, look, I voted. I hope everyone who listens and is watching votes. We're going to play this throughout the weekend. Get people motivated to vote because it's important. And once again, Dan, we're not overstating it, right? I
No,
mean,
we're absolutely not. This last time we were on, I said something that I thought would be interpreted or seen as being very radical, and I said, obviously within my lifetime, I have never seen an election, midterm or presidential, right, as serious as this election. And I said, I think you would probably have to go all the way back to the Civil War, and like Dred Scott, those kind of decisions,
yeah.
right?
And
Um,
and
yeah.
you're actually being very moderate in your assessment.
I was trying to be moderate. I was trying to be historically objective.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, Dan, we'll cross our fingers and hope for the best for our country, for democracy, and hope that the people in the middle, I've been thinking about that Jimmy Eats World song, The Middle.
Yeah,
We need the people, the good people,
that's right.
Republican and Democrat and independents have to come to the middle. And, like I said, that New York Times assessment that, man, the people who hate democracy, the people who hate, not democracy, the people who hate politics
In
are going
government, they
to
they they hate
government.
government.
Yeah, because they don't trust it. They turn off the news. They turn off I actually think that the way politics is run makes you that way. Like
It does. It
I don't want
does.
to do a political ad. I don't. I
Yeah,
don't. I'll
yeah,
just turn it off.
yeah. But
And
see, the alternative is you got to read the statements. In the instance of candidates, right?
yeah,
It's the ads, okay, that have too much influence. Okay,
yeah,
but see, we come right back to our old discussions about what's wrong with American political process, and that is the money. It
yeah.
comes back to the money.
The money, and you got to stop. You got to say, look, if you buy an ad, a political ad, it's a waste of money. You got to say, if it shouldn't be about, uh, the money in your war chest, your campaign war chest. In fact, that's the big thing that we have to go after. And I know people have talked about it. Campaign finance reform, uh, citizens, um,
United
citizen.
Citizens United case. What is that?
Yeah, yeah,
Jeez, it's
citizen.
been 2009, 2010.
Yeah, we've lived with it now for a good long time
Three
because
cycles. This is the third presidential cycle coming up.
we need to do something about that. All right,
Yeah,
look,
okay.
Dan, uh, I
Roberts said it wasn't going to be a problem.
uh,
Remember that? Right in Obama's face.
uh,
Obama's first or second, his second, uh, yeah, State of the Union.
you
He
just
said
can't
the Citizens United case, and Roberts was right in the front row, shaking his head. No, it's not going to be a problem. Okay, what do you
see.
think now, Chief Justice?
Well, the thing is, he had this trust in politics, his fellow Republicans, and he
Yeah,
was right.
what's fair and what's logical? Yeah, where's that now? I mean, he didn't see what the Republicans were already doing against Obama even before he got elected.
Well,
You
I
know,
mean,
what is he blind to that?
everyone wants to be, oh, we're on the high road. Right? This is going to be
Yeah,
better, and it's not. It's not. And that's the problem. And so we have hope. We have hope for the future. We keep our voices going. We keep the fight going. The fight
you know,
will
yeah.
continue.
The hard part is trying to do this out of love, right? Is trying to say, please come out and vote, and vote with a clear understanding of what's in your own best interests. Okay, and they'll take that as an insult. I know a lot of people think, well, what you don't think I know what I'm doing? And it's like it's really tough. It's
Unfortunately,
really
people don't know what they're doing.
tough.
We'll see on Wednesday. We'll see on because we're not going to get all the results on Tuesday. We'll have to see on.
When former Secretary of State Tillerson said he's a moron, and then when he was investigated by people, journalists like yourself, did you call him a moron? He said, I am not even going to honor that question. Never denied that he called him a moron, you know.
Yeah,
So there you go. You know,
yeah,
I put a list up in my class of all of the people that were used to be in Trump's administration, and
yeah.
all of them were gone except for people like Stephen Miller and Bannon. And
Yeah.
Bannon was never a staff member.
No, he's just a hanger on, and
Yeah, he's
you
an
know,
advisor.
this is the thing. The whole all the lies and the rhetoric. I mean, Carrie Lake in Arizona. You saw her. She denied laughing at Paul Pelosi's,
That's right.
investigation, and she's caught on tape. And she, Paul
Her
paid.
crowd laughed. Her crowd laughed out loud, man. LOL.
Yeah, I mean, it's we need to stop that. We need to just say no to the deny. We have to deny the deniers, and let's see what happens on Tuesday. Okay, Dan,
Absolutely. Thank
uh,
you.
take care. Dan Gonzales, professor of, well, let's see, professor of Asian American Studies, Filipino American Studies, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, professor emeritus.
Yes, emeritus.
Emeritus. Hey, thank you very much.
Meaning that it means that I've aged out, but I still retain privileges.
Yeah, well, we still support you. Hey, look, and we're not gonna we're gonna learn our lesson. We're not gonna talk about the Warriors. Not
Okay.
this.
I
But
know that's so problematic, man.
well,
Okay, I hope to see you next week. I'm sure on the sly we'll be talking to each other the day after the elections to see
let,
what's happening.
let's cross our.
California is going to figure prominently, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of our count is going to come in late,
yeah,
right? And it's just a question of how many. How
yeah,
many? Anyway, thank you very much for having me on once again. It's great to
yeah.
see you.
Hey, take care, Dan. Really appreciate it, and let's hope for the best on Tuesday. Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my good friend, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State. Hey, look, you got to vote. Tuesday's a day. You got to take it seriously. We're looking all hands on deck. And they're saying it's going to be the people who don't care who are going to sway it. The swing voters, the independent voters, the people who, like I said, have one eye on politics, if they have an eye at all on politics, and then the other eye they have on Netflix and the Warrior game and the NFL and everything else. We got to care. We got to care. Check out on YouTube Joe Biden's democracy speech. Go on the New York Times website and check out the transcript of Joe Biden's democracy speech. See me read it on show 423. Yesterday, I read from Joe Biden's democracy speech. It is what's at stake this year. It's undeniable. It's what's at stake these midterm elections, 2022. You got to be there. You got to be there. I thank you for being here. I'm here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific. I'll be repeating this show 424. Don't forget 423. That's when I talk about that Joe Biden speech and other shows this week. We talk about affirmative action. Always good to get Professor Dan's insight on affirmative action. Catch it on, I don't know, I'm on Twitter at Emil Amok, but I'm not sure after today how much I like Twitter. Facebook.com, EmilGuillermo.media. My YouTube page, at Emil Guillermo 1, at Emil Amok 1 on YouTube. EMIL AMOK 1. That's at YouTube. And then, of course, on my website, amok.com. All right. Regular viewers know I am much calmer than I usually have been in the past. And I owe it all to meditation. I was telling my friend, look, I hate what Kyrie Irving, I got my Kanyes and my Kyries mixed up. I hate what Kyrie Irving was saying, I hate his anti-Semitism, but you know, I'm an outside observer. I can condemn him, but instead of judging and condemning, I want to see if he can change. I'm not enabling him. I was telling a friend of mine who's Jewish, I said, look, I want to try the tack of love. And he said, I'm not interested in loving him. Well, then we're going to be at you're going to be at loggerheads with him for some time. I haven't given up on that love approach. I haven't given up on that, but we're struggling. We're struggling because you got to hope the other side starts showing the love back. This is the tough part. So, but meditation has helped. I'm less reactive. I'm much more realistic. I'm going to go in. I've already voted. You guys see my I voted sign. I'm going to go in waiting Tuesday night, Wednesday, not just crossing my fingers, but trying to see if America has figured out that it's all about we the people. We as American people. And so, as I like to close with a little loving self-kindness, a little metta meditation. As I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil here. We'll be replaying these all throughout the weekend. Don't forget, you can still register to vote if you're in California. Provisional ballot. So there's some states that have same state registration. You got to do it. You got to do it now. This is the time. It's that serious. Till next time. Mahal Kita.